welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Brianne and this is Diary of a Homemaker. Today we are going to be doing another Sunday kitchen restock. If you all missed my last Sunday kitchen restock, I will be sure to link that in the comments below. Today we are working on a few different things that are staples in our household. The first thing being granola. So I specifically used to eat a ton of processed cereals. It was actually one of the things that was hard for me to initially give up simply because it was one of my favorite things to eat. So I found this recipe. I honestly wish I could remember where I found this recipe and who it originated from. I would love to give them credit, but I don't. I've had this recipe for about 2 years now, and this is the only recipe that I use to make cereal or granola. We do change it up a little bit, so I'll show you and you'll see. But the basic recipe is very, very simple. You're just going to need 4 cups of old-fashioned oats, so rolled oats, 1.5 cups of nuts or seeds, 1/2 cup of honey or maple syrup, 1/2 cup of oil of your choice. I typically use coconut or olive oil, but I'm sure you could use avocado oil if that's something that you had. And then I use a little bit of vanilla typically. Today I did not. A little bit of salt, and I like to use cinnamon. Cinnamon is just very, very good in this granola recipe. And you're just going to mix everything up. You could totally add some dried fruit or something like that if you prefer that type of thing. I usually don't, simply because we make our parfaits and I use frozen fruit in our parfaits, and I just don't love having another kind of fruit. Also, if I'm eating it with milk, I just don't like the gummy texture that you get with dried fruit. So I just don't add it, but you totally could. The seeds and nuts that I ended up using today were chia seeds, sunflower seeds, and then walnuts. The sunflower seeds and the chia seeds I both order through Azure Standard. If you aren't familiar with Azure Standard, I share a ton about them on my channel. I do have a playlist you can go watch if you prefer to are more of a visual learner and would like to learn more about it that way. I do have a playlist of all of my Azure haul videos. And then my walnuts actually came from Costco. But I did go ahead, and you'll see I ended up having to chop up the walnuts. This was the first time I ended up using walnuts in my cereal, and I actually really like it. I had already been using it, like adding it to it in my parfaits, but I thought, why am I doing that when I could just go ahead and cut out that step and just add it to the add it to the granola as I was baking it. And so I did, and I really, really like it. I do normally use honey for my cereal. I actually thought I was out. Somehow I thought I was out, but I'm not. I still have like 1/2 gallon left. So I ended up using maple syrup for this batch. I really like the maple syrup too. You know, you can use either one, whichever you have on hand. Again, our maple syrup comes from Azure. We just order a ton of staple things from them, and we really enjoy their maple syrup. But you're just going to mix everything together. This is kind of the consistency that you're looking for. The key to that crisp granola I have found is making sure that you have that oil incorporated. So that oil is really going to saturate those oats, and you're going to be able to get like that crisp, that crunch that you really do get whenever you purchase like a store-bought granola. Once you get to this consistency, you can go ahead and add it to a baking sheet, because this is going to be going in the oven for about anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. My specific oven, I put them in for 11 minutes, and then I pull it out, which I will show you how I do. And then I move all of the granola around, because sometimes the edges, if it's thin, the edges can tend to get a little bit overdone. And I just don't want any kind of burnt flavor in my granola. So I do go ahead and move things around halfway through, and then I'll go ahead and put it back in the oven for the remaining 11 minutes, and that is perfect for my oven. So like I said, once I get this all spread out nice and thin, a really thin layer, or even layer I should say, I'll just go ahead and stick it in the oven. Next up, we are going to be working on biscuits. So these I actually shared in my most recent Spend a Day Cooking with Me, or like a full day of meals. I shared how we do our biscuits, or kind of like a preview of how we do our biscuits. So this is how we do them. I had mentioned having convenience type foods, and this is kind of a way that we are able to fill our freezer with those convenience type foods, but be in control of the ingredients. So we make up a big batch of biscuits at one time, and then we can pull out 10 biscuits, we can pull out 20 biscuits, however many biscuits we want, we can pull them out whenever we want, and we can have biscuits whenever we want. So this recipe will also be linked in the comments, or I guess I should say shared in the comments below. Again, I have had this recipe for about 2 years now, and I don't know where this specific recipe originated from. I really do love sharing the recipes or linking recipes whenever I can. I love trying recipes, and I love giving credit to those who created those recipes, and I'm sad that I can't share those, or can't share the creator of these last 2 recipes, because I would love to. I just simply don't know where they came from. Okay, so I did end up making a triple batch of biscuits today. The butter is weighed in grams, so you'll see me weighing them on the scale, and the key to making a flaky biscuit is you don't want your butter to get too hot. So really what I could have done, and really what I should do, but I don't, is probably just stick my butter in the freezer for a little bit and I could shred it up. I don't do that. Our fridge really does keep the butter pretty cold, but I just cut it up into small-ish pieces, and then I will add it to the flour mixture. Once all of the butter is added to the flour mixture, you'll see me go ahead and take both of my hands and really work the flour, making sure to coat all of the butter with flour first, and then I go ahead and kind of like smush the butter into smaller pieces. This doesn't take very long at all, but you're going to want to do this before you add your milk. So I will show you, and you will see how you do the smushing, but you're looking for like small pea size or smaller pieces of butter. That way you don't have any big chunks of butter in your biscuit, and everything is nice and cohesive. Once you get to that consistency, you're going to then go ahead and add your milk. So we just use regular milk from the store, but you could probably use, if you prefer a buttermilk biscuit, you could probably use buttermilk to make these so they tasted more like a buttermilk biscuit. I just don't ever have buttermilk on hand, and that's just one more thing that I would have to keep my pantry stocked with. And I really don't like having a million ingredients. I have enough ingredients as it is. I just don't want to have to stock one more ingredient. So I just use regular milk from the store, and it works perfect for us. But you'll see here how I'm adding, or not adding, but how I'm smushing and just really working the butter in so everything is equally distributed. I really, really love this recipe, and once I find a recipe that I like, I don't change. So it almost becomes like a staple in my house. Like I have my staple tortilla recipe, I have my staple biscuit recipe, I have my staple pie crust recipe, and once I find a recipe that is easy and works for our family and is delicious, because that's important, I probably won't ever change. I end up writing it on a note card. I love having hard copies of things. I'm a pen and paper gal. I don't use my phone for notes or things like that or whatever. I just really prefer to have pen and paper. And so once it becomes a staple recipe, I do go ahead and write it on a note card, and then that note card gets tucked away in my little recipe box in my kitchen, and that's my go-to recipe. So once I do go ahead and get all of this mixed, I end up having to add a little bit of flour. I noticed my dough was just a little bit too sticky, and I just know the consistency that it's supposed to be. So I do go ahead and add just a little bit of flour just so things aren't sticking really bad. And then somehow I missed all of this footage. So sorry. But basically, once you get things mixed together, you get that consistency, you're just going to roll everything out. And you're looking for about somewhere in between a little under half an inch thick for the biscuit. And you're just going to roll it out as flat and as square as you possibly can. They're not going to be perfect. It's fine. They're just biscuits. They're all going to taste the same. But you will see I do roll ours out, and then I don't use a circle biscuit cutter. I keep things very simple. I just use a knife, and we do square biscuits. And again, they taste the same. They're just square. They're not circles. But once we get to this point, once they're all cut, I will go ahead and just put them on a cookie sheet, and then they get frozen like this first. After they are frozen, we'll then go ahead and move them into a gallon Ziploc bag. At this point, my granola is half done, so I am going ahead and see how I'm pulling in those edges. That's what's most important whenever you reach this point. You just don't want your granola to get crunchy, like over crispy on the edges, because it can. So I'm just taking my spatula, moving the outsides in and the inside out, and then sticking it back in for the remaining 11 minutes in the oven. Okay, so next up is going to be sourdough crackers. Again, this is a staple recipe in our house. This is the only cracker recipe that we use. I am obsessed with this recipe. It is so good. This recipe I actually found on TikTok. She had mentioned that she had found it from Homestead and Chill. So I will link the TikTok creator that shared this recipe. But it's delicious. It's perfect. I don't need another cracker recipe. This is the one, and it does use sourdough discard, which is a great way to use up some of the discard whenever you bake with sourdough. I would love to get into sharing more about how we make sourdough work for our family, but one thing at a time. So I'm just going to go ahead and add my flour, the sourdough discard, and then I am going to go ahead and add flour to feed my sourdough, and then I'm just going to shove that off to the side because I don't have time to mess with it right now. But I will go ahead and get that fed, put that back on the shelf, and then we'll have that for tomorrow. Anyways, the sourdough discard, the flour, and then the rest of the ingredients for the crackers. This recipe calls for nutritional yeast. I love nutritional yeast. If you aren't using nutritional yeast, you should try it. It is a great source of protein. It's actually a whole protein. So it means it has all of the, I believe all of the amino acids. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it has all the amino acids to make it a complete protein. Also oil. The recipe called for coconut oil, but I've used coconut, I've used olive. I've used them both, and I haven't noticed a huge difference, so I just used whatever I already have out. Next is salt. I just use a big old pinch of salt, and then I love thyme and rosemary, but you could totally use any other herbs or seasonings that you like. I started with rosemary and thyme, and once I find something that I like, I don't change. I do go ahead and add a little bit of black pepper. I just love black pepper. It's one of my favorite spices, and so always add it. But we don't bake, okay, so we make our sourdough discard crackers, the dough. We don't bake them ahead of time for the week. So this isn't like a cracker, or I haven't, maybe I just haven't found it, like perfected it, like to be able to eat like later on. But I have found that this specific recipe is best if cooked fresh and eaten fresh. So I just make the dough ahead of time. I don't bake them for the week. I just make the dough. And this is what the dough is going to look like. It's very much like a Play-Doh consistency. And then I just put it in the bowl and I cover it in a plastic wrap, and it's just going to live in the fridge for like I mean, it could stay in there for a week. It probably won't. It'll probably last us 4 days because we make crackers about 3 to 4 times a week. And so that was a double batch. So I'll make half of the batch later today. We're actually planning on having like a charcuterie board dinner, nothing fancy. So I'll make half of the batch later today and I'll just roll them out and bake them. And then I'll have another batch ready to go whenever we want crackers again. And so that's all we have to do. And I love it. I don't have to think about it. I think a lot of times for us, if we don't have things ready, then we're just not going to do them. Or I think that's like one of the challenges whenever it comes to cooking from scratch is partly like if you don't have it done, then you're just not going to do it. Or you just don't want to make the mess because it's a mess that you're going to have to clean up. And we found that if we just make it at the beginning of the week, we have one day, we just make the mess, we clean up the mess. We already have a lot of the things prepped for the week and we don't have to think about it. We don't have to plan for it. We don't have to make that mess and clean up that mess. And it just having that like in place and that routine has just really helped help us stay on track eating the way that we eat. So the next thing I'm working on is making some pizza sauce and then some pizza crust. So the pizza sauce, we're planning on having pizza today for lunch, and then I'll probably have pizza one day this week. We eat a lot of pizza. It's a way that we can just use up whatever vegetables we have in our fridge, add some cheese, add some sauce. It's a pizza. It's good. So yeah, the pizza sauce, I use a can of crushed tomatoes and then whatever seasonings you prefer, like in an Italian style. I use garlic powder, onion powder, oregano, basil, salt, and pepper, and that's going to be to taste. So I don't have a specific recipe to share with you as far as a pasta sauce recipe. It's just really to taste. So I just add my seasonings to the tomatoes, the crushed tomatoes, and then I just let it cook down for probably 20 minutes or so, just so it thickens. I found that if you don't let it thicken a little bit, it can tend to be a little bit too runny, and your pasta dough or your pizza crust is just not going to be, it's going to be harder for that to cook thoroughly because you're going to have all of the moisture from the pasta sauce or the pizza sauce. Anyways, next, the pizza dough. This is the one. I have tried so many pizza doughs over the years. I've tried sourdough pizza crust. I have not found one that I super love. I actually found this one on a whim. I was craving pizza one night and I found this one and it was supposed to be really quick. I was so hungry, but I just will not eat pizza out anymore. So I found this recipe. I really enjoy it. I found that it freezes great. I have been making this for about 3 months now, and I love it. I make several batches at a time, and then I portion it out into Ziploc bags, making sure to put olive oil in there first so your dough does not stick to the bag. That's key. Always do that. And then I can just pull it out a day before, and I can have a pizza whenever I want. So we could do like a regular pizza, we could do a breakfast pizza. I'd really like to experiment a little bit and try a dessert pizza. I have not done that yet. It's on the list. So yeah, I go ahead and make 4 pizza crusts and I'll just put them in these bags. I'll make sure to label them, date them, and then put olive oil in them like I mentioned, and then these will just go directly into the freezer. And they'll last for, well, actually, I don't know how long they last. We haven't had them last because we're always eating them. Pizza is like I said, one of those things that we eat all the time. We love having them, and having this pizza crust ready to go really is, again, one of those convenience type items that I had mentioned in the beginning. Having these things prepped and ready to go really does set yourself up for success and keep you from reaching for those processed, pre-manufactured foods that are not so great for you. Okay, so once I have all of the pizza dough already mixed together, I do go ahead and just put them in the bag, and I've already got them labeled. I already have the olive oil in there. I'll just go ahead and start another batch. So I ended up making 4 pizza crusts today. This will probably last us maybe 3 weeks, and I'll just get them zipped up, and then these will just go directly into the freezer. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and work on that pasta sauce, or I keep saying pasta sauce, I mean pizza sauce. I need to go ahead and just get that in a jar. So I'm just going to put that in a quart-sized canning jar, and then I'll use one of the plastic jar lids, and that'll just go in the fridge. That'll last about a week in the fridge, and then that's all I need to do. So that's taken care of. That's prepped. I have pizza sauce for the week, and I don't have to make it again later in this week. The next thing I need to do is go ahead and get the granola put in the granola canister. So one of the reasons I really love making the granola on the parchment paper is it makes it super easy to transfer the granola once we're finished into the canister. It also prevents any of the little granola bits getting stuck to the cookie sheet, and just makes for a much easier clean up. This is how we keep or how we store our cereal, and the lid just goes on, and then it'll get stored on the top shelf of the bookshelf behind me. This bookshelf behind me is our working pantry, and I do have a video on it, as well as our bulk pantry upstairs. But this is all of our ingredients. This is how we cook. This is everything that we use on a daily basis. And that's going to wrap it up for today's video. So today we ended up with 4 pizza crusts, pizza sauce, sourdough crackers, biscuits, and you will see I did do some of the parfaits. I did not share that on this video, but it is something that we make every single week. And so if you'd like to see how we do that, you can go back and watch our first kitchen restock video, and then also the cereal. So if you are still here, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.